Sometimes the scariest monsters don't crawl out from under your bed, they move in with you. I didn't have much after college, just a degree, a duffel bag of clothes, and a cheap TV. With student loans breathing down my neck, I couldn't afford my own place, so I took a shared apartment listed online. It wasn't ideal, but rent was dirt cheap, and I didn't ask too many questions. The guy I ended up sharing the place with, his name was Clint Wallace. Southern accent, thick and slow like molasses, the kind that made everything he said sound harmless. At first, he kept to himself. Not exactly friendly, but not weird either. Just quiet. The room I got was already furnished. That was the big plus. A small bed, a wooden dresser, a standing lamp, and even a TV shelf in the corner. Seemed decent. But one thing stood out. The dresser was cluttered with stuffed animals, like a child's bedroom. The largest was an old, beige teddy bear, worn, but clean, sitting squarely on top, staring straight at the bed. Its glassy eyes gave me the creeps. When I asked Clint about them, he let out this odd chuckle, like a laugh that didn't quite belong to the joke. "Landlord's rules," he said, still grinning. "I got the same deal in my room. They stay where they are. Don't touch them." I shrugged it off. Weird? Yeah, but I was tired. I spent the first night unpacking and setting up the little space I had. By midnight, I laid back to watch TV, trying to let the hum of late-night commercials lull me to sleep. That's when I heard it. A soft click, faint, electronic. Not from the TV, not from outside. It was in the room. I sat up and scanned the dark corners. Nothing. I chalked it up to an old appliance or maybe the air conditioner and went back to my show. The next night, Clint wasn't home. Didn't see or hear him. I assumed he had a job, maybe night shifts. I was alone. Again, around midnight, I heard the sound. Click. This time, clearer, more precise. Like something turning on. Or recording. I muted the TV. Silence. I stood, walked around the room. The noise had stopped. Still nothing to see. Then the third night came. Clint was home when I got back from my part-time job. He was sitting in the kitchen, sipping something from a mug. When I passed him, he smiled and asked, "How's that book you're reading? The one with the blue cover?" I froze. The book I was reading did have a blue cover, but I always kept it under my bed when I wasn't reading it. My room had no window, and Clint had no reason to go in there. I turned to him slowly. "How do you know what book I'm reading?" He gave a slow shrug. Must have seen it the other day when I was getting something I left in there. Didn't mean nothing by it. There was no lock on my door, I realized that now, and that meant Clint could have come in any time. But how could he know the color of a book hidden under the bed? Something didn't sit right. That night I didn't read. I didn't watch TV. I sat there and stared at the teddy bear. Its eyes seemed too real. Too focused. I stood up and picked it up. It felt heavier than it should. I turned it around and looked into its eyes. That's when I saw it, a tiny lens, embedded behind the glass eye, a camera. My stomach flipped. That bear had been watching me since the moment I moved in. I dropped it like it was burning. It hit the floor with a soft thud and rolled over, still looking at me. I stormed to Clint's door. Locked. Of course, it was. I pounded on it. "Clint, open up." No answer. I saw the light underneath the door flicker off, the sound of a lock sliding into place. He was in there, listening. I backed away slowly and grabbed my phone, called the landlord and told him everything. The camera, the stuffed animals, the weird roommate who was watching me. The landlord's voice on the other end was eerily calm. Too calm. "All right," he said, "if you want to leave tonight, go ahead. We won't hold you to the lease." No questions. No outrage. Just quiet permission. That was the moment I realized something worse. They knew. I stuffed what I could into my bag and left within 15 minutes. I didn't say goodbye. I didn't even take the book. It's been 4 years since then. I live alone now. Triple locked doors, no roommates, no teddy bears. But sometimes in thrift stores or antique shops I catch sight of one of those bears. The same dull beige fur, the same glass eyes. and I always wonder. He watched me sleep. He watched me change. He knew things I never said out loud. It wasn't the bear that scared me most. It was how long I never noticed. How many people are still being watched. Monsters don't always live under the bed. Sometimes they decorate it. He never said a word, but he followed me, watched me. And the night he crawled through my window, which I realized silence was the loudest scream. It was the summer of 2017 when we met our new neighbors. A family of 3 moved into the yellow house next door, the Whitakers. My mom, dad, sister Haley, and I were invited over for a casual Friday night barbecue. At first, it seemed normal, friendly. They grilled burgers and dogs in the backyard under porch lights and fireflies. That was the first time I met them. Brian, the warm and chatty father, his quiet wife Susan, and their teenage son, Logan. Logan didn't speak, not even a word. He just stood near the garden fence staring down at the grass, or worse, at me. Every time I looked up, his pale eyes were already on me. Still, empty, watching. I laughed it off as nerves. New people made me uncomfortable. But something about Logan wasn't right. His silence felt loaded, like a bowstring pulled tight. I left early, slipping back home across the yard, blaming a headache. No one questioned it. The next morning, I walked to school. It was only 2 blocks, something I did often. But that day felt different. I glanced back near the Whitakers' driveway. Someone ducked behind a tree, a tall figure. My stomach twisted. I picked up the pace, heart racing. When I turned again just before the school gate, I saw him. Logan, peeking from behind a bush, watching me again. Not moving, just watching. I told my parents when I got home. They exchanged stiff glances and said they'd check in. After a short talk with the neighbors, they told me Logan was just different. His parents claimed he had his own way of understanding the world. That was their excuse. But that night, while I sat on our patio doing homework, I looked up and froze. One single upstairs window in the Whitaker house looked directly into our backyard. And there he was, Logan, sitting in the dark, staring straight down at me. When our eyes met, he slipped out of view. I told my parents again, same response, same excuse. That night I went to bed late, scrolling through texts. At some point I drifted off. When I rolled over in the dark to turn off my lamp, I heard it click the window, and then the soft drag of it sliding open. My breath stopped. I bolted upright, in the dark, and screamed. Within seconds, my parents burst into the room and flipped on the lights, and that's when we saw him. Logan, halfway through my window, holding a kitchen knife. His face was blank. His hair dripped with sweat. He stepped inside like he belonged there. My dad pulled me back and screamed for us to get out. We ran, barefoot and crying, next door. Brian, Logan's father, followed us back and found his son calmly sitting in our living room, still clutching the knife like it was part of him. No apology, no explanation, just silence. My dad lost it, screamed threats that shook the walls, called the cops, demanded a restraining order, told the Whitakers to move, or else. The police didn't arrest Logan exactly. They just took him, somewhere. Maybe a hospital, maybe not. They moved out within the week. But I still dream about that night. The window, the knife, the eyes. He never knocked. He never spoke. He just opened the window and stepped into my nightmares. You never think you're being watched until the moment you realize someone knew exactly where you hide your key, and exactly when you'd be alone. My name is Cassidy Blake. I was out with my friends at Maddox's bar in East Nashville like we did almost every Saturday. It was the usual scene, cheap drinks, loud music, and a crowd we knew too well. I had a few drinks, maybe more than a few, and the night quickly turned into a blur. I vaguely remember some guy coming up to talk to me. He was stocky, had a beard, looked greasy and intense, but nothing about it struck me as threatening at the time. Just another night out. Around midnight, I decided to walk home. It's only a few blocks away, and I've done it hundreds of times. I didn't think twice about it. We always kept a spare key under this old frog-shaped flower pot on the porch. It was a dumb habit, but it made things easy when I didn't want to carry a purse or keys. I let myself in, locked the door behind me, and went straight to bed. I didn't even bother to change or brush my teeth. I lay in bed scrolling through my phone and texting my best friend Liv to see if she made it home okay. That's when she texted me. "How'd you get away from that guy?" I asked what guy. She replied, "The creep. He left the bar right after you did." My stomach twisted. Just then, I heard the front door open downstairs. I told myself it was probably my little brother Aiden. He usually got off late from his pizza delivery job and came home quietly. But then I heard footsteps on the stairs. Another text from Liv popped up. "He was watching you all night." I called out, "Aiden?" No answer. The hallway outside my door creaked and then the door opened slowly. I couldn't see who it was. It was pitch black out there. The door quietly shut again, but I didn't hear anyone walk away. I had the sickening feeling someone was still standing right outside. I immediately texted Aiden. "Are you home?" He replied, "No. Why? Are you messing with the front door? It keeps unlocking." That's when the fear truly set in. I called 911 with trembling fingers, whispering to the dispatcher that someone was in my house. As I reached to turn on the lamp, my heart pounded so hard I could barely hear the words coming from the phone. The moment the light filled the room, I saw him, a man, standing in the corner by the door. I screamed louder than I ever have in my life. He darted out of the room, down the stairs, and out the front door. I stayed on the line with the operator, frozen in place, until the police arrived. One of the officers found something in the front door lock, a key. It was our spare. The same one I'd grabbed from under the flower pot. The officer told me the intruder had likely followed me home, watched me lift the pot, waited for the right moment, then used the key to get inside. The next day, my friends filled in the blanks. That man had been watching me the whole night at the bar. I didn't notice, I didn't feel scared until it was too late. We got rid of the spare key, changed the locks, installed cameras and motion lights, and I haven't walked home alone since. They say monsters don't exist, but the real ones don't growl or howl. They just quietly follow you home and use your own key to let themselves in.